My favorite movie is Whiplash. My favorite food is pizza. My favorite color is blue. My name is Jimmy McDermott. I'm a freshman here at Boston College. I'm studying Management of Information Systems, and I own one business. I've been coding for 8 years now. I started in middle school, taught myself how to do basic little websites, so little things that would, track this and that, and just little things for family members. Nothing ever good or important, but taught myself that in middle school, and that kind of opened up this love for creating things. There's probably not a day that goes by where I don't code something. One thing that people don't always know about me when they start working with me is that I have obsessive compulsive disorder. One thing that a lot of people maybe don't realize, or that's really interesting when it comes to mental illness, is that it's this invisible disorder, right? So I could be walking down the street and nobody could have any idea, for the most part, that I'm suffering from something, or I might not have any idea that, my next door neighbor or my best friend could be suffering from the same thing that I am. So it's often shoved aside and not talked about because it's this invisible thing that we can't see. Sometimes I just get hooked. That's the best kind of way I describe it, is like hooked or stuck on things. Is I get stuck on brain aneurysms, and I can't stop researching and thinking and worrying about having a brain aneurysm. And the problem with OCD and these intrusive thoughts and the way that I deal with them is that I'm a very rational person, and so rationally I know that the majority of these thoughts that I'm having are irrational and that they don't matter, and it's so rare, and like other things that I obsess about like are not going to happen, and it's just things that wouldn't bother someone without OCD, or they're thoughts that shouldn't matter. One thing that I've struggled with is that you can't just tell me to stop worrying, because my mind doesn't work like that. Just like you can't tell someone who's suffering from depression to stop being sad, or someone who's anxious to stop being anxious, because it doesn't work like that. Like every fiber of my being worries about things that are irrational, and it's just how I am. And the best thing that we can do is learn how to cope with it and learn how to deal with it and raise the awareness around it, because telling me or telling others to just stop worrying or put that part of you aside does nothing to help. I think it's really important to talk about and think about mental illness outside of just the vacuum of mental illness, because there's a lot of great awareness that's being raised and things that are being done to help people with mental illness, but we often don't talk about the people who have mental illness who are also running a business, or the people who have mental illness and are also struggling with this or doing this. A lot of people in Silicon Valley either suffer from bipolar disorder or depression, and they're just kind of taught not to talk about it. And that's really hard, because you kind of shove this very important piece of you to the back and teach it that it shouldn't come out and that it's wrong and that it's bad. And so kind of perpetuates this cycle of like the whole stigma of not talking about it. But when you bring it back to business, what ends up happening is like, if you do kind of just shutter that part of you, like the human part of you, the part that actually makes you who you are and makes you human, not only are you gonna suffer, but like business profits are gonna suffer too. Before I was diagnosed and sought treatment for my OCD, I would struggle with these obsessive cycles that I couldn't really recognize, because I didn't really know what was going on in my mind. I kind of just played it off as anxiety or whatever it may be. And now that I am seeking treatment and I'm working with a psychologist, I've learned how to work through these obsessive cycles and try and break them when I realize that they're happening. Because then what happens is it allows me to kind of step outside those spirals and those the worry and thought spirals that I get into, and step outside the rut and continue to be productive. But it's tough, because you have to retrain your mind to think a different way, and you're constantly fighting against what your mind wants to do, and questioning everything that it says to you. And so it's tough and it's exhausting, but it's worth it.